Indeed.
So there's some interesting things going on in Texas. I'm going to call later about Rick Perry, and you might see some interesting pictures about him this week. But
I saw some kind of a tweet saying he got indicted. What was that for? I don't pay attention to really news or politics, especially.
That was to keep him out of the presidential run, is what that was for. So now we can be certain that the field has been narrowed to some extent.
Did Rand Paul do it?
No.
At any rate, you'll see some mugshots of him later this week, and then I'll call in about it. But
wait! What? Tell us what was going on. I'm curious now. what was the indictment?
Basically there was a prosecutor who in a county who drove drunk, and there's some video of her online stumbling around and saying, "How dare you pull me over? I work for this county."
I'm a prosecutor.
Wow.
Yeah, she behaved about as well as you'd expect from a politician being, having to follow their own rules.
Yeah, they don't like that.
They don't like that. And so Perry said, okay, well, you're not fit to run this office anymore. Please resign, or else I'm going to cut your funding. And then she refused to do that, so he cut their funding. And so...
and what's indictable about that?
Well, apparently, they got some Democrats from Austin to sit on a grand jury and indict him. And
I see.
The reasoning was, well, you didn't have the right. You have the right to veto things as a governor, but you do not have the right to threaten to veto things as a governor. That's their legal argument.
Sounds like a crappy one.
It does sound like a crappy one. I actually wanted to call about a different Texas politician, though, if that's okay.
Sure.
Well, have you heard of the governor's race that's going on right now to replace Rick Perry?
I have heard nothing about it. And I'm kind of glad.
Okay, well,
yeah. I'm like thinking to myself, do I want to hear any more?
I was really hoping this indictment would be like he got caught like with his pants down or something, or like something at least kind of scandalous and exciting.
Right, I hate siding with Rick Perry. Nathan?
Everyone hates that, yes.
I hate those glasses of his. God, they look so pretentious.
Well, of everything I could complain about this guy, it's probably not his glasses that I would focus on.
The glasses keep coming up for some reason. I don't know why people are so fixated on that.
Oh,
anyway,
anything to avoid focusing on like the real evils that politicians do while in office, stealing money from all these people, making deals with pharma companies to like get them to vaccinate all the kids with their proprietary vaccines that cost a lot of money, and the state pays for it, and the list just goes on and on.
So there are two politicians running in this race, and one of them is a Democrat named Wendy Davis. And there was something eye-catching to me about a report that came out about her, basically her personal life and her career at law school. She kind of presents herself as this hardworking single mom who pulled herself up by the bootstraps. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that this lawyer she married, who was 13 years older than her, cashed in his 401k to send her to Harvard Law School. And, I don't really have a problem with necessarily people who are married giving each other money. I mean, that seems like a normal thing to do.
But you should probably not be using the bootstrap story at that point.
Mm.
Right. But
it wasn't your bootstraps you pulled yourself up by, honey.
What was it, Mark?
Indeed, Mark.
It's one of those words.
Well, what really caught my eye about it is that her husband claimed that she divorced him the day after he paid her last Harvard loan.
Oh, that's painful.
Wow.
And it got me to thinking...
that looks bad.
Yeah, it looks bad. And it got me to thinking, there's this idea of sex for money, or like sex for resources. And, some people argue that this
I've
is
heard
a
of this idea.
biological thing. Yes, you've heard of this idea. I'm glad, Mark. I guess what it made me wonder is, do you think that her husband had a right to be shocked? Like, do you think that people who are in these kinds of situations where it's a kind of sex for resources thing, do you think they realize that? Or do you think it's more of like, oh, I'm in love and this is a loving relationship, and what? You're divorcing me after I paid your last loan off? How could that be?
I think it's almost never talked about explicitly. I think it's people do everything they can to convince themselves and compartmentalize it and say that that's not what's going on.
Yeah, I would think that
they do realize it's going on.
Sorry, what was that?
He seemed to act shocked, like, I could never have seen this in a million years.
Maybe he was just acting shocked to like bring some other legal, or to make her look bad or something. Lawyers are great at acting,
Is he a lawyer too?
Yeah, right. Okay. He was a lawyer.
Yeah, I got to say that I think I can, I would be stunned too.
Yeah.
We're paying off my wife's student loans right now, and That would make me feel really bad.
Let's go right back to Nathan, who's on Skype. Now, Nathan, you were kind of filling us in on the Texas governor's race and some of the scandalous things that have been going on. And you brought up the issue of a candidate that had basically claimed publicly that she bootstrapped her way through law school. And in reality, she married a guy who basically sold his 401k to pay for her law school and then divorced him as soon as he mailed the last check, basically. Is that essentially what happened?
That's the allegation, yes, in his divorce paperwork. And it to give a couple more details, she married him at like 22 or something, and he was 12 or 13 years older than her. And then he helped pay her loans from her undergraduate, and then he cashed in his 401k to pay for her Harvard school loans. So I'm assuming Harvard Law School costs more than UT Law School.
Yeah, to answer your question as to whether or not, like, should this guy be shocked? I think anyone that defines their love with a piece of paper and metal bands should not be shocked by anything.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.